Yes.
Commissioner Sami. Commissioner Byrd. Here. Commissioner Dunn. Commissioner Art.
Here.
Commissioner Fromer. Commissioner Gilmetti.
Here.
Commissioner Guardino. Here. Commissioner Inman. Here. Commissioner Waring.
Here.
And Chair Cataloni.
Here. May I have the approval for the minutes of September the 27th, please? All those in favor? Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm reporting on 3 items today. One, I wanted to remind the Commission that today we would like the annual report adopted. We sent the most recent version to you last week, and that version incorporated comments we had received up to that point. So what I'm asking you for you today is to approve the report that was submitted to you, and allow us staff to make any editorial changes that may be necessary for publication purposes. And I'd like to take an action right now, if you would.
Move approval. All those in favor? Motion passes.
The second item I want to cover is I want to introduce a new staff member that just joined Commission staff, Laura Pennebaker. She needs to stand up. Laura comes to us from Caltrans. She spent 3 years in the planning division. She has a master's degree in city and regional planning, and previously she had actually assisted the Commission working with Susan Branson on developing the RTP guidelines. That was a couple of years ago. So she is very familiar with what we've done, and she was a great resource at that point, and we went after her to bring her on staff. So it's a huge accomplishment for Susan to bring such a talented and dedicated person. And welcome on board.
Thank you.
The third item I'd like to cover, but I'm going to turn it over to Susan Branson, is really a brief update on the statewide needs assessment. That's the effort that's ongoing right now. So Susan, if you don't mind, a couple of minutes worth of an update would be great.
Okay. Commissioners, since the last update I provided to you, I think there's been a lot, I think, in the process that is moving forward, but a little bit of changes. Over this last month, as Commission staff, and we've consulted with a number of key decision makers that would be the recipients of our report and that would have a role in moving forward on our report and possibly taking any action and considering for future legislation. And so in light of that, we had a work group meeting, a statewide work group meeting yesterday for 2 hours, and talked about modifying the table of contents for our report to really focus right up front on, we have a $300 billion funding shortfall that was identified in 2011, presented to you all. And within that $300 billion, over the next 10 years, assuming that we're not going to obtain that amount of funding, what are our most critical needs on a statewide level, from a statewide perspective, that we would need to address as a state in our transportation system? And so with that, we talked about a focus on system preservation, taking care of the system. What would be the most important aspects of system preservation that we should be addressing? Caltrans has assumed a leadership role on helping us with that. At the highway level with local streets and roads, CSAC is helping us with that. On transit, we did reach out to the Transit Association, and the executive director is helping us with that. In light of that, at the work group meeting, we also formed a work group that will also be addressing system expansion, and it will include all the regions and all the rurals, and we'll have representation from throughout the state, in helping us come up with what are the most important performance outcomes that we would want to achieve over the next 10 years. with that as a framework, we're moving forward on identifying accomplishments that we've actually made in subsequent to the passage of Proposition 1B. You know, we want to highlight in our report, in order for our report to have credibility, we really need to talk about all the good things that we've done as a transportation community to deliver on the promises to the taxpayer. And so that is something that the work group is doing. We also have a number of work groups that now have formed to talk about efficiencies and effectiveness, streamlining of operations, cost-cutting measures, consolidation of functions, you know, reforms, CEQA streamlining in the permitting processes and things like that. So that is going on too. I wanted to let you know that. I've asked the work groups to quantify wherever possible the actual projected cost savings that would be achieved through these measures were there to be any policy changes or regulatory reforms. So that is going on. In addition, we you know, the work group had identified a number of highlighted revenue options that they believe would be best suited for pursuing over the next 10 years. And those is just to, I guess, restate those. I've already shared those with you, but really we're looking at the cap and trade funds, making sure that there's, you know, we demonstrate in our report a nexus to greenhouse gas emission statewide goals and objectives. We also have the vehicle license fee. We have excise tax and indexing that to inflation, VMT pilot program over the next 10 years. Looking at that, we are highlighting tolling, statewide infrastructure bond initiative, P3 and TIFIA. In addition, the one other area I want to make sure you're aware of, we do plan to have a chapter in this report that would include an economic analysis of the benefits going forward, were these performance outcomes to be attained and achieved over the next 10 years, as well as an economic analysis if these performance outcomes are not achieved. So I just, as staff, I'd like to thank all of the work group members who are helping in this effort. They're working very hard. Just to put it in perspective, I threw out, you know, some new requests for this report yesterday, and I'm asking for a turnaround by November 15th. And, you know, everybody is just so willing to help in this effort, and I really appreciate it. So, Commissioners, if you have any questions for me.
That concludes the Executive Director report. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the Commissioners' reports. Do we have Fran?
Good morning. I wanted to report on the TACA committee. I attended that meeting on October 17th, and a couple of things stood out to me, and I have to remind everybody that I'm fairly new to this committee, so bear with me a little bit. But funding is an issue, and reportedly we have a number of projects that we do not have the ability to match the federal funds. So the initial lists look a little surprising to me. The request of FAA grants, the projects that are eligible and have met the FAA grant request, totals something around 55.9 million, I believe. And our state requirement to match that would be 2.8 or 2.9 million. So I think we really need to dig in a little bit more into those details, because I hate to think that our state is missing out on $55 million for a, in round numbers, $3 million investment. So I think we really need to find out. Often people will use one little statement as a crutch, so we say, when there are really extraneous circumstances that really we didn't have the ability to accomplish that goal. But I just want to make sure that we as a state are not leaving money on the table. And a portion of those are reportedly safety projects. So I think also I would ask Caltrans to dig a little deeper and to see if we indeed do have safety projects that we are not able to fund. Reportedly, they're about somewhere around $2 million in acquisition and development funds that relate directly to safety. And once again, there can be a wide range of the definition of safety, so I'd be naive to think that that was 100% they were all equal. But I would really like to have us come together, and if they are indeed putting people's lives at risk, I think we need to get to the bottom of that and see, and then also on the funds, that if we're leaving something on the table, I think Susan made it pretty clear to us in her comments that she would welcome any dollars coming in terms of our needs assessment and meeting those goals. So if I could just ask Caltrans maybe to dig a little deeper and see what we can find out, and perhaps maybe it's half of those projects that really we need to somehow find the money some way to take care of them. So we have the summary reports and lists of those projects, and so if we could have a report back next time, and I can speak for my fellow commissioners, I think we'll all roll up our sleeves and try desperately to make that happen with you. So also relating to TACA, we have a recommendation for a new committee member. Stacy Howard actually attended the meeting. She represents the National Business Aviation Association, so I think it's a good segment of the industry to be recommended. Her bio is in the attachment, and I'd like to have a motion to nominate her.
May we have a motion on that?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. You report
you.
back to that, please. Any other commissioners' reports?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to report 2 weeks ago, we had a town hall meeting in Santa Cruz, and we met with the Central Coast Coalition. That consists of Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo, Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz counties. These town halls are really kind of fun for us commissioners because they're more relaxed. We have more interaction with the transportation people that represent those counties, and we seem to learn probably a lot more than just sitting up here and reading reports. So I would encourage all of you, even the more regional players, to allow us to come in and do these town hall meetings. We had great attendance. We had about 6 commissioners attending. We covered a variety of topics. The 101 corridor is obviously their main spine that is a goods movement corridor for the Central Coast. They're working on P3s. They're working on rail improvements, and it was just a real informative meeting. I don't know if any of my other commissioners who were in attendance would like to comment on it, but I would encourage all of you to participate in these town hall meetings because they're very informative.
Commissioner Inman?
I would just second that, and I find it very important for us to go out. What was especially enlightening to me was to look at the bridge work that we're doing, and they have been saving up their money for 18 years, so God bless them, to really make this happen. But I think it is so very, very important because, as people often say that all politics are local, I think all transportation gets a little localized too. So it is important for us to go out and talk to the folks. And of course, I was very encouraged because there was a whole segment on goods movement and freight. So that made my evening.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also will comment that the town hall was very enlightening. It's always great to get a visual on the projects, as Commissioner Inman said. In addition, I'd like to report that I attended in a couple of capacities a Monday meeting on the Orange County Transportation Authority's review of 3 alternatives for improvement to the 405 freeway. One alternative would just add a couple lanes. A second alternative would have paved over everything with free lanes. A third alternative, very simplistically, would have added 2 new express lanes that would have added another funding mechanism for Orange County Transportation. It was curious from my standpoint that labor, business, SCAG, every major group, the Auto Club, stood up and asked for the express lanes to be approved. But the Orange County Transportation Authority, in their wisdom, chose the very simplest plan that would merely meet the Measure M, Self-Help County commitments to the voters by just adding 1 free lane in each direction. It was interesting to the business community. We were particularly troubled by this because, as your transportation commissioner, representing with all the information we have on the statewide transportation needs assessment, the recent policy on funding going for SHOP, for repair and maintenance, which I shared with OCTA board members, that there was no new capacity building opportunities in the foreseeable future. They still elected to go without creating another local funding opportunity. So I share this with you from a number of perspectives. First and foremost, it was very clear that the locals along the 405 corridor region, the level of knowledge on how transportation gets designed, built, and funded and constructed continues to be very minimal, and in fact a lot of misinformation. So clearly your business community really has a lot of work to do teaching locals about that. But I also share it with the transportation community in specific. We have to figure out a better way to talk to the public on educating them about the needs. And there was no better evidence of that this week with the decisions that were made. So I recognize it's a locally preferred alternative. A lot of work still has to be done at Caltrans. The environmental work still has to come to us. But from a commission standpoint, here's a little microcosm of the battles that we face in securing additional funding for transportation, even at the local level, while we're grappling with it at the state level from a policy perspective. So thank you for letting me share that, that little interesting adventure this week.
Thank you. Are there any other? I might just go back to the town hall meeting in Santa Cruz. I think this particular event was, we had more commissioners at this particular meeting than we've had at any other, and that to me means that the commissioners are being more interested in these town halls, and I think that with what we did down there and how gracious those folks were to us, that I think on these town halls, as many of the commissioners that is possible should attend, because I agree with the other commissioners that I learn a lot more when you're sitting next to someone talking to them rather than you all out there a long ways away. But with that, I'd like to say that I certainly appreciate, we all appreciate what Santa Cruz did for us. Now we'll move on. Oh, whoa, I got one thing I got to do here. The most important thing. Annette, I need you again. Annette, I want to present to you this resolution from the California Transportation Commission. I'm not going to read all the whereases and all of that. We kind of went over some of that last night. I just want to say for the commissioners and myself that we certainly appreciate everything you've done for us, far beyond what you were supposed to do. And we appreciate that, and we sorely will miss you. So if you think about maybe staying, the door is still open, but I guess you're not going to do that. Commissioner Gomez.
To echo what the chair just mentioned, Annette and I have been together on this commission for quite some time, and she goes above and beyond her normal duties, taking care of little things that people wouldn't even remember. But she's just been a fabulous servant to the state of California and to this commission, and I wish her the very best.
Thank you.
You know, and it just kind of echoing the sentiment here. It's, most of you do know out in the audience, I'm the hopeless one here. You know, and while Annette is in the middle of trying to get stuff out the door and work with the rest of the staff on the agenda, you know, you got some knucklehead that gets off an airplane and gets on the phone and says, now, where am I exactly supposed to be? And she always found the time. She never complained, and we're truly going to miss you. I just wish you the best, a long and happy retirement.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner.
I just want to echo everything that's been said. My first exposure to the CTC staff when I was first sworn in was I had more interfacing with Annette than anyone else, and she was really great about kind of getting me oriented. And for a while, I thought she was in charge, and then after a while, I realized she really was in charge. In a lot of ways, she's the glue that really held everything together, and the way that that she just interfaces with everyone is a real joy. And you've just been great, and we're going to really miss you. I think Andre kind of echoed a lot of our sentiments. He got a little emotional last night just talking about it. I think he's going to really miss you, and, you know, we're going to have to watch out for him now because we don't know what he's going to do without you around.
I think he's retiring.
Yeah, so.
Now, we're not losing a staff member, we're losing a babysitter.
But anyway, thank you. Thank you for everything.
Any other commissioners that might want something, say something?
Well, I'd just like to announce the arrival of Senator DeSaulnier. Welcome.
I was here a half hour ago, but I didn't make it.
The meeting actually starts at 9 o'clock, not 9:30.
Nice to see you, too.
We had a bet last night how long it would take for you to say something like that when he showed up, and, you know, we win the bet.
Thank you, Commissioner Gilmetti. I appreciate you announcing the senator this morning. He was really looking for you to say nice things about him, and I told him that you would.
The meeting's not over yet.
All right. We'll move on to the commissioners' meeting compensation. I need a vote on that.
Move it.
I got a second? Second. All those in favor? So moved. Now I'd like to have the other Brian this morning, if you would, please.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. I wanted to take this time to announce a few key personnel changes at High Speed Rail and Department of Motor Vehicles. I'm going to defer to Rick Land to talk about some changes at Caltrans. You might have heard yesterday High Speed Rail announced that they've hired the former Amtrak chief engineer to be the program manager for High Speed Rail. So in that capacity, he's going to lead the technical and engineering teams at High Speed Rail. And I'm sure we'll also find a way to, access his expertise for other intercity rail issues here in California. The other thing, person I wanted to mention was George Valverde at DMV, who's retiring this month. And George has been the DMV director for 6 years and really done a great job of addressing challenges at the department. Like Caltrans, DMV's also been challenged with, certain staffing constraints and, fiscal constraints as well. And one of the things I've looked at there is trying to reduce the number of people coming into field offices to renew their annual car registration, because that really increases the lines, and it's something people can do through the mail and increasingly online. So the amount of, in the last 5 years, the amount of people paying their car renewals online has increased from 5 million to 8 million. And some of that's come from reduced, U.S. postal mail, but actually the number of people coming into field offices in person to renew their car registration actually fallen by 1 million. From 7 million to 6 million over 5 years. So I think it's a great example of using technology and educating the public on some different ways to do business that ultimately benefits the public, but also has saved a lot of money for DMV in terms of facilities and staff. So I want to wish Director Valverde well in his retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Then move on to the Caltrans report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Tavaloni, Commissioners. I'm Rick Land. I'm the Chief Deputy Director for Caltrans. It's my pleasure to be here in front of the Commission in place of Malcolm Doherty, Director, who's out of the state right now. Just a couple personnel notes. First of all, I'm pleased to announce that the Governor has appointed Will Shuck to the position of Caltrans Deputy Director of External Affairs. This is a position that we haven't filled for a while. But Will's public affairs and legislative experience is really going to be an asset to us at Caltrans. He most recently served as the Chief of Staff for Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal, who's Chair of the Assembly Transportation Commission, held multiple positions in the office of Assemblymember Patty Berg from 2004 to 2008, including Press Secretary and Chief of Staff. He also was the Capitol Bureau Chief for the Stockton Record from 2001 to 2004. And he was a journalist reporting on Southern California news from 1989 to 1998, and was Sacramento Bureau Chief for the Long Beach Press Telegram from 1998 to 2001. So Will is a welcome addition to our External Affairs team and to the department. A couple other notes. The last weekend in September, we had Carmageddon 2, which I think to the disappointment of the media turned out to be pretty much a non-event. The I-405 through Sepulveda Pass was closed in both directions to allow for demolition of the north side of the Mulholland Drive Bridge. It was scheduled to be closed until the Monday morning commute on October 1st. Instead, drivers were allowed back on the north side of the freeway around 8:30 p.m. and on the south side of the freeway at about 11:45 p.m. the night before. So the motoring public did a great job of hearing our message, as traffic in the region was pretty minor. So we continue to use this tool of complete closures where it makes sense. This last weekend we closed the San Mateo Hayward Bridge for a 55-hour closure, and the work went so well that instead of having 2 weekends with planned closures, we completed all the work in 1 weekend. It's just amazing what we can get done when we're able to do a complete closure, get the message out, manage the expectations of the traveling public to get a lot of work done. On the design-build front, we opened bids on the DeVore Design-Build project on September 28th. It was a best value proposal. The winning proposer was Atkinson Contractors. The notice of intent to award was posted on October 13th. The proposal's bid was $208 million. Our engineer's estimate was $205 million, so the proposal was 1.5% over. So a good job, and kudos to the team on that aspect of it. So we're moving forward with the DeVore project. A few other project milestones I wanted to mention. On October 5th, there was a groundbreaking for Lincoln Bypass, finally open to the traveling public. It opened on just 3 days later, open to the traveling public. It was a $325 million project accomplished through partnerships between Placer County Transportation Agency, the City of Lincoln, Placer County, South Placer Regional Transportation Authority, and FHWA. This is the longest stretch of new highway built in California in a decade. And we estimate that nearly 20,000 motorists a day can expect to see a significant decrease in their travel times in the Lincoln area thanks to that new Lincoln Bypass. Also, on October 18th, there was a completion ceremony for a project that I think many of you are familiar with, and that's the Brawley Bypass in Imperial County. The bypass will be available for travel in the next few weeks after some finishing touches. This is another project where there's a lot of support at the local, state, and even national level. So all the stakeholders involved, including the CTC, should be proud of the efforts in helping complete this long-awaited project. Finally, I'd just like to comment on one item that's on the agenda today. We'll be presenting a proposal for establishing a State Route 99 corridor reserve to address unforeseen expenses in the Prop 1B Route 99 corridor construction program. We think this proposal is consistent with the intent of the CTC's Accountability Implementation Plan, approved for the Prop 1B Route 99 program. So that's the end of my report. Be happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. We'll move on to the local reports, please. Will? Is your mic on?
Is that better?
That's better.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. One of those that is on the agenda this morning for the CTC is the STIP AB 3090 plan. As many of you are familiar with, the AB 3090 is a significant tool for the regions to help advance the delivery of priority projects when state revenues do not provide for the delivery of those projects according to anticipated schedules. The RTPAs recognize that the inclusion of projects on the AB 3090 plan do not suggest an approval by the Commission for AB 3090s on those projects, but we do believe that this is a good long-range plan to be able to look at these holistically and to look at them regarding current statewide policies for AB 3090 and hope that it can be used to help support the actual approval of these AB 3090s in the future for these projects. And we appreciate CTC staff efforts in preparing this. The other item of significance is the implementation of MAP 21. The RTPAs have been actively participating on a variety of groups, including the actual MAP 21 working group, as well as the various subgroups in the development of some of the policies and recommendations for the implementation of MAP 21. We are currently working with the CTC, the department, and FHWA in the identification of various types of principles for fiscal year 2014 in recognition that these may also be with us for some time to come after the 2-year bill is in place. The other part of this is we're looking to work to ensure that the efforts that are occurring, part of the subgroups, are compiled in a way that it can help support a more collective and holistic review of those policy implications. And then finally, on behalf of the RTPAs, we'd like to present this certificate of appreciation to Annette for her tenure and the CTC. From all of us, we significantly appreciate all of her efforts. I think many of those have been noted by the commissioners, many by some of the other folks last night at the retirement reception. But we just want a special thank you to Annette. And I guess knowing personally of where she plans to spend some of her retirement up in Montana, and my fondness for that area, I know that she is going to be enjoying herself quite a bit. So Annette, thank you again on behalf of all the RTPAs. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a report from the rural areas.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sharon Scherzinger, Executive Director, El Dorado County Transportation Commission, Chair of the Rural Counties Task Force. We haven't had any Rural County Task Force meetings since the last Commission meeting. However, the membership has been quite engaged in several of the things you've heard about here earlier this morning. The first of which is the needs assessment. I was fortunate enough to participate on the Executive Committee meeting discussing the future of the needs assessment and what policy direction we might have. We were heartened to hear that the top priority was maintenance of the existing system. That's a critical issue to the rural areas in the state. Secondly, we've been involved in developing the needs assessment, contributed in several areas, and we are looking forward to the system expansion portion and highlighting those projects that we see as being critical in the rural areas of the state. We also have been working on efficiencies and identifying those projects that we have delivered to help forward the argument for more funding for transportation. We've also been working a lot on MAP 21. We've had several meetings with key legislative staff in the Assembly and Senate. It's been a really good opportunity to provide education back and forth in terms of what those issues are. Not only looking towards the implementation of MAP 21, but what future funding sources might be available in the state, such as cap and trade, and how those might apply in a rural area. In terms of the MAP 21 working groups, we've had a number of our members actively involved with that. We still continue to be concerned in terms of the impacts of certain formulas and how they're more generated towards population basis. Our preference would be to look at it in terms of the transportation system and what we want to build in that regard. And I think that concludes my comments, and if there are any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Self-help counties.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and Senator Keith Dunn here, Executive Director of Self-Help Counties for Annie Chesley, who couldn't be here today. We, with our colleagues in the regions, have also been working on the MAP 21 discussion and contemplation. It's been an effort that I think has taken a lot of time, and we appreciate our colleagues' dedication and the department working with us as well. We have, as a coalition, been working the last few months and meeting to discuss ways to look at this next year as an opportunity to build upon some of the efforts that our governor and Secretary Kelly have put forth in reforming the Department of Transportation. We've been working on developing a white paper, which we will be issuing in the coming months to hopefully implement some of those ideas. We've also been working on legislation and a communication plan that would help streamline some of the reforms that we'd like to see that are developed out of that plan. We also have been Focus on the Future, which takes place in a few weeks. We're pleased that many of you will be participating, some of you on panels, some of you attending. We hope that the program is going to be informative and working towards building some momentum going into this next year as we look at some of the challenges facing our funding cliff that's looming, some of the project delivery tools that we need. Hopefully will be highlighted and provide some education to those that attend the conference. The coalition is looking forward to another successful year. We appreciate working with the commission and look forward to doing that moving forward. And that's the end of my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? Thank you. Now we move on to the Federal Highway Administration, and I believe that gentleman's name is Vince Mamano. Is that correct, sir?
Often pronounced that way, yes.
Thank you.
But I did notice I got moved down. I was being reminded of a Jerry Seinfeld episode where you're on the speed dial, that the lower you are on the speed dial. Last couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, I was number 8, and I'm back down to 11 again. I don't know what's going on. I mean, I brought the money. We got MAP 21 signed. I'm hurt.
But
I'm just hurt. Okay.
What have you done for us
sir,
lately?
I think part of the problem is it's just like playing ball. If your average goes down,
that's it. Is that what it is?
You go
got
down.
A little A-Rod action here. Did I get benched? Did I get benched in a playoff game? Holy cow!
But if you have some good words for us this morning, that which helps if the money's involved.
Nah, you might as well.
We'll certainly take a look at it.
Go ahead and put me on 85 then. I'll back up. What's the last bullet line here?
If the dollars are right, we'll start you out at number 1.
That's beautiful. I feel the love now. It's questionable, but I feel it. Now I want to start off with a little bit of stuff that Rick talked about, with congratulating Caltrans and everybody that's involved, MTA, with Carmageddon 2. It's just a fantastic feat that was done. That you decided to take that feat on, and all the stuff you got accomplished on that, and then compliments again on the Lincoln bypass. But a little anecdotal stuff. I've had a couple conversations. We've got a friend of my wife's in the music industry, and I've talked to him backstage at one time, and he asked me what I do, and I told him the Fed, and he goes, "Do you have anything to do with Carmageddon?" I said, "Was that good?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Then yeah, I did everything. I signed it. It was all my idea." And he just went on and on. So this is in the music industry, talking about how great transportation handled something. They said they had a great time. They even walked out to look at it. It was like a ghost town. And then the Lincoln bypass. I was at a volleyball tournament this weekend, and I had 2 people come up to me because they knew I was at Federal Highway. "Hey, that Lincoln bypass is awesome." It's just the sort of thing I kind of want to say this back to everybody here. People talk about the stuff that you do. I know it's very frustrating. They usually talk about the bad things that, something that struggle that might happen. Somebody parks a burning truck underneath a bridge, and they'll talk about how bad why it took so long or something like that. But they actually do a lot of talk about a lot of the great things that happen here in California. I get a lot of comments on the 80 work that's going on over the summit. But I just kind of wanted to remind everybody the stuff that we do here is extraordinary. No other state in the country it works at it to the level you work at it. So I just, every once in a while, remind yourselves that you're doing a great job. So I wanted to, right now, the bad news, no. No, MAP 21 we talked about. The best part about MAP 21 is that that's a 2-year authorization, which is when the federal government says, hey, this is the amount of money we're going to be able to spend in the next 2 years. But you're not actually allowed to spend it until we give you an appropriations. But we do have a 6-month continuation resolution on the appropriations, so that goes till March. So that's actually the longest appropriations that we've had in a long time also. So we've got 6 months of money to spend, and so that's a positive thing. Wanted to talk real quick about the earmarks, the 2003, 2006 earmarks, reminding everybody that if we don't get those, I know there's some of them that were moved forward to complete, some of them that were, the money was put on different projects. If those earmarks are not going to get done, I know you got to get those things obligated by the beginning of November. Caltrans needs to know, because if we get that strung along and we don't end up spending all that money, then we don't get everybody else's money around the country who didn't spend theirs. So it's very important that everybody's very clear up front. We're going to work with you. We've talked with Caltrans, and we're going to do everything we can to work in the gray area to get these things obligated, but we're not going to break any laws. We're not going to do something we shouldn't do. So don't expect Caltrans to do it at the last minute to sign something they shouldn't. Don't expect Federal Highway to do that either. If you're in doubt, make sure you're in great communication with Caltrans on how we're going to implement that and get that authorized. Always want to talk about closing out projects. The inactive obligations down. Again, we're constantly working. I don't think anybody realizes the effort that goes into closing out projects, to keeping those inactive obligations. And it talks about money that Fran was talking about, trying to find match money. If you got money sitting on a project that's not going to be spent, that stuff needs to be deobligated so it can be spent. So we're really doing a big push on that, big push on trying to close out the Recovery Act projects. We've only got a few left to close out comparatively. So that's a big thing we're trying to do. But more importantly, I have a guest with me today. His name is Peter Osborne. He's the Senior Project Manager for the high-speed rail for Federal Rail Administration. So he's co-located, him and I are co-located. It's a one DOT office where we've got Federal Rail and Federal Highway together in the same office. But I wanted to introduce Peter and have him introduce himself. And then I'll take any questions for me, unless you want to yell at him instead of me. Because he used to work for Federal Highway, so you can yell at him.
Don't tell them that, Vince. Don't tell them that. No, it's my pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you, Vince, and thank you for the opportunity, Commissioners, to introduce myself this morning. Been here just a little bit over a month. I'm with the Federal Railroad Administration, formerly with the Federal Highway Administration. I've been a 20-year U.S. DOT employee, predominantly having worked in Federal Highway, and previous position was as a division administrator in the Rhode Island office. So going from a small state to a very large state. But I'm thrilled to be part of this very exciting project, the California High-Speed Rail Project, and was very happy when the Federal Railroad Administration reached out to me and offered me this position. It shows their commitment to high-speed rail here in California, placing me here in Sacramento, full-time position dedicated to work on seeing the success of the high-speed rail project. So again, it's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to meeting those of you that I haven't met and working with all the key stakeholders here in California. And thank you very much. Back to Vince and give him some hard questions.
And don't be very careful in what Vince might tell you about us sitting up here, please.
I've only said good things, as far as you know.
Well, that's the second good thing you said today, so I think we'll move you up one slot. Thank you. Now we'll move into the information calendar. Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners. The next 7 agenda items, 12 through 18, are information reports deemed by staff not to raise any issues. The individual information report will not be discussed unless specifically requested by a commissioner.
Any questions? Okay.
Then we'll move on to the consent calendar.
Now we'll move on to the consent calendar, please.
Yes, Commissioners. The next 23 agenda items, 19 through 41, are consent items. The following changes need to be identified. Under item 23, the dollar amount is $66 million, not $66,000. Item 31, it's allocation, not project. And also the fiscal year is different. It's 2011-12, not 12-13. Item 37, the dollar amounts are different. It's not $25 million, it's $19 million. And item 40, it's project number 32, not 23. With these changes, staff recommends that the commission approve the consent calendar.
Move approval. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll move on to the next item, item number 42, policy matters, please. Mitch?
Commissioner Stephen Keck will be presenting this item for the department.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Stephen Keck with Caltrans Budgets. Got a new controller here, see if we can make it work, and I already messed it up. Okay, so generally at these meetings I talk about allocation capacity, where we are so far in the year, and if we have any recommended changes for allocation capacity. We're very early in the state fiscal year, just started the federal fiscal year, so we're not seeing anything in the picture that would make us want to change our allocation capacity recommendations. So I'll go through where we are through the first quarter of allocations. For the current year, we had allocation capacity of almost $5.2 billion across all fund sources. A lot of that is located in the bond area. And through the first quarter of the state fiscal year, we had allocations totaling nearly $1.5 billion, which is about 28% of the total. That's a pretty good percentage, 28% of the funds allocated in 25% of the year. But I will point out that the first and fourth quarters of the year are generally the largest of the year. So when we hit December, as I'm reporting on the second quarter, we probably won't see 50%, but that's usually a normal situation. So in terms of allocation capacity, we're in good shape, and in terms of allocations for the year, we're also in very good shape, about where we would expect to be. The next, I did it again. The next thing I want to talk about is a follow-up to my last presentation where I talked about our base excise tax revenues over time and how we've seen a significant decrease in those revenues since the peak in 2006-07. So this is sort of a companion chart to that. This is looking at gasoline consumption, also going back to that peak in 2006-07. The same is true for consumption as for revenue, in that we saw the largest decrease in consumption in 2008, which was coincident with the big stock market crash and the beginning of what would become a very large recession. Looking backwards at the data, which is the same way they determined when a recession actually happened, we can see that actually preceding the big collapse in 2008, there was a downturn in gasoline consumption. That's not unusual when we look at recessions in the past. You know, some of these indicators precede an actual recession, but you don't know it until you look backwards at the data. What I wanted to point out in this chart, though, was we saw the biggest drop in 2008, and in the 4 years since there, we're doing what I like to call scraping along the bottom. We've seen small decreases year over year, but we're not seeing any big drops. And this is a chart of gasoline. I did not show the diesel, but a bright spot in this data is that diesel consumption for last year, the 2011-12 year, is up 3%. And that's the first increase in either gas or diesel that we've seen since 2006-07. I'm taking that as a sign that we're starting to see the industry come back, commercial come back. They're driving more mileage. We should start to see the same happen for gasoline. Gasoline consumption is more closely tied to whether people are driving to work or not. So as those jobs start picking up, we'll hopefully begin to see an uptick in consumption, which will translate into an uptick in revenue. So at the last presentation, I think I said something on the order of, I see a light at the end of the tunnel. The diesel is one of those reasons for seeing that light.
Stephen, can I ask you a question on this?
Certainly.
This consumption. I'm up here.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a corresponding chart that would tell you there's an increase in transit ridership, or is this more fuel-efficient cars that are driving this thing down?
So I don't have the data on transit ridership. I'm sure there is an increase. We've heard from other reports that there has been record ridership in transit and in rail. I don't have those numbers. This general trend of consumption follows the trend in vehicle miles traveled. It has also been decreasing. There is some change in fuel economy, but if you look back over the last 10 years, there has been very little change in the average fuel economy of the cars on the road today. In fact, as of the 11-12 data, the empirical miles per gallon, just taking the vehicle miles traveled and the gallons consumed and doing the math, is at 21.7 miles per gallon, which is not much change from where we were 5 or 10 years ago. So what we're seeing and what this trend is showing us, if we were to include VMT as well, is that they're sort of side by side. We do have some issues that the data is collected at different times, so they are not always one-to-one, but they're always correlated. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. You may have the same issue. Stephen, it's hard to look at this other than just it is what it is, but I mean, you haven't factored in the price of gas that would reduce vehicle gasoline consumption as well, because the price of gas has gone up at the same time.
Certainly. Well, we've seen the most increases in gasoline price just in this last year. Prior to that, it was up and down around the same level, and in 2000, I think it was 9-10, we saw some of the lowest prices in a while. So we generally consider consumption to be fairly inelastic when it comes to the price. People still need to drive to work. What drove this big drop is a drop in employment. People no longer driving to work, no longer driving at all. While the price does affect consumption to some extent, it's very tiny that we can determine.
Well, I wonder, though, if there isn't some cutoff point where enough's enough. I mean, you know, before we used to say that $5 was the magic, and we saw people making a different decision, and then, you know, kind of slides back, and then we get used to $5. But don't you think that there is some point where people really do begin to look at other options? I think it has to be. There has to be some correlation between what it's going to cost me and how efficient my trips are, or how
Certainly.
I get there.
And we've seen that in other countries as well. In Europe, they generally pay more than twice as much per gallon of gasoline than we do. And what you see there is a move towards far more fuel-efficient cars than what we have here. In fact, I think the standards in Europe are almost double what they are here. Or not the standards so much, but the actual gas mileage of the cars on the road are almost double what they are here. It's much smaller cars, shorter trips, and much less consumption of gasoline for those cars. So there is a point where that tips. In California, that point is probably higher than we've seen so far because there's not a lot of other choices. This is a big spread out state, and you have to get to where you need to go, and car has been the main way. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a point. We just don't know what that point is. And certainly we must be getting close to it because $5 a gallon is a lot more than it has been in the past. It's 500% of what it was 20 years ago. So there's a point. We just don't know what it is.
If I could, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think the more interesting question in my work at CleanTech San Diego, I mean, we're seeing so many changes in car technologies, in CAFE standards, and alternatives that from a political or modeling point of view, you might have to start doing some sensitivity analysis and make the assumption that this is the new norm, and then project that ahead. Don't expect a bounce. Project that ahead and then see what that does to your revenue and expense projections, again on a sensitivity analysis, because I really think the industry and the consumers realize they have options that'll take that 21.6 or whatever it is and move it up. All the trends are moving that way.
Absolutely, and we are in fact engaged now in looking at the new CAFE standards, how they're calculated. There's a significant change in how they're calculated per the size of the vehicle now, where they weren't done that way in the past. There will be an impact, as clearly as fuel economy increases, there will be an impact to our revenue, which gives me an opportunity to plug maybe an alternative to collecting revenue on this proxy basis, which is a direct user fee on the use of the highways, such as a vehicle mile tax, a VMT tax that Susan briefly talked about in her presentation. Something like that would obviate the need to tie ourselves to the consumption of gasoline and really put the cost of the travel or the fee for the travel directly to the travel that's going on. And that's certainly something that's being looked at in other states, being looked at in this state and nationwide. That's really the ultimate user fee, is to do it in that manner, and then we don't have to worry about gasoline consumption anymore.
Best-selling car in California is a Toyota Prius at 50 miles per gallon.
And the Toyota Prius already meets the fuel economy standards set out for 2022. So they're way ahead of the game, and it actually helps Toyota in the short run. So anyway, I'll move on if that's okay, if I can get this thing to work. To talk about an actual bright spot in dealing with some of these issues that you've heard me talk about for probably over a year now. I've been speaking of a glitch in the system with the way they backfill weight fees since probably at least this time last year. It was an issue we raised with the Department of Finance and with the legislature that the controller wasn't properly transferring backfilling the weight fees that were being taken from the state highway account. They weren't backfilling it with the revenues generated from the new excise tax. As a response to that interpretation by the controllers, new legislation was passed as part of the budget passed in June, which was a victory for us. And since that time, the controller's office has been interpreting that language in as many different ways as they can. But we're told they're very, very close to actually starting to backfill that revenue that we missed in 2011-12, which is somewhere just a bit over $100 million. And then they're going to start transferring the revenue for the current year that they've been withholding, which makes up the rest of that $161 million figure. Now, that's our calculation that we believe that we've been I won't say shorted, but that has been withheld from the state highway account. The controller's calculation is very close, but not identical to that amount. They just need a little more time to work through how they're going to transfer the money in the current year, and hopefully they'll be able to do so within a month or so, and you'll have some very good news from me next time as well. Now, this is a cash bump for us, but you may remember in my prior presentations I mentioned we have a loan from the general fund just to make day-to-day payroll. So this will help us to pay that loan back without really making a bump to what we can allocate or what we can use towards our projects. But that's the good news. So that's a bright spot, and I'll follow up with a couple of more bright spots with the federal side. Vince actually already talked about this continuing resolution piece. The continuing resolution was essentially enacted to provide funding for transportation in the absence of a full federal budget act. And what a continuing resolution does is it says we'll take last year's budget for transportation and we'll continue it into the current year. In this case, it was 6 months, so they're taking funding equal to 6 months of last year's budget and providing it for this year. The action that the federal government can take on the second half of the budget will have a far greater impact, or could have a far greater impact on transportation funding than the sequestration, which I'll talk about in a second. If there's something drastic like an administrative change in the next few months, and the federal government decides to appropriate less for transportation in the second half of the year, that could have a much greater impact on our total transportation funding. There was some solutions offered by the House in the last budget cycle where they were looking at only providing enough sufficient funding to utilize the existing balances and the existing revenue in the Federal Highway Trust Fund. If that were the case, we would see a significant decrease in funding, despite what MAP 21 says. Those set maximums, those set apportionment levels. It's the budget that is set, that sets the actual funding that comes to California. We don't anticipate any change, but I just want to put that out there so that you're aware that there is a possibility of a change in the second half of the federal fiscal year. In terms of sequestration, I get asked a lot about what's the possible impacts to transportation. The really good news is for the vast majority of highway and transit funds, they are exempt from sequestration. So if sequestration goes into effect in January, if they start making these mandatory cuts to programs, very little of transportation funds could be affected by that. We've done an analysis. We've looked at all the transportation funds that are up for cuts. I think the biggest one of those is a program where the national cut would be $130 million. So if you take a share, California share of 9 or 10%, you're looking at 10 to 12 to $15 million impact, which is really on the margin of our total funding. Nothing to sneeze at. $15 million is more than I get paid in a year, but it certainly wouldn't end or halt transportation funding as we know it. So I think there's pretty good news in terms of sequestration. And of course, there's still time between now and January for the federal government to come to the cuts that they needed to reach to end sequestration. And that's another bright spot. I think certainly negotiations between now and the election are off the table, but we could see something after that. So with that, I'll end my presentation and answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you.
Stephen, just when the gas tax swap was implemented a couple of years ago, there was an anticipation that because we were moving from the sales tax, which was a percentage, to a discrete gas excise tax, that there would be a loss of funding, and so there was implemented into the language I don't know if it's quarterly or semi-annually, but a regular review of the price, and if the price went up, there was supposed to be an increase. It seemed to me from the initial ones I saw that the number crunching was ridiculously low compared to what we were seeing in actual gas prices. Has anybody got a little spreadsheet or that shows what those calculations have been, and are they reflecting really what's going on with the gas prices?
Certainly. So those calculations are done by, I think it's the Board of Equalization in the Department of Finance, and they're done annually, and I think they're released in March. And so for the current year, our current 18-cent per gallon new tax that I referred to, that is the result of the calculations that were performed and released last March. So that's the rate for this current fiscal year. We won't see another change until next year.
Next March?
Next March. But that change will reflect it's backwards looking, right? So it'll reflect the gas prices that we've seen through this current year and whatever data occurred in the last part of the last state fiscal year. So we will see a change, but it'll be a year later than you might see it if it was still tied directly to the price of gasoline.
I'll be interested to see what that looks like, because they seem to do a pretty good job of calculating what we owe them in taxes. So, I'd like to see some of that gas tax or that gas price reflected accurately.
Certainly, and I'd like to see the two taxes not be exactly the same, because it becomes difficult to explain when they're both 18 cents.
Any other questions? Thank you, Stephen.
Not my problem. Just give me the money.
Now we move on to item number 43. Mitch?
Commissioners, item 43 is an update on the STIP AB 3090 plan. This plan was developed pursuant to STIP guidelines that were amended in June to allow more flexibility with the AB 3090 reimbursements. The plan, as was noted in the RTPA report, is not a commitment by the regions to apply for these 3090s, nor is it a recommendation by Commission staff. It's just to help us understand where we are in terms of the amount of demand there might be for the AB 3090s out there, and how that relates to the limits in terms of what's in the STIP guidelines. When we were looking at revising the STIP guidelines, there was a lot of discussion about the dollar amount limits. We're well below that in these cases, so it's nice to know that that's not really an issue. The plan is laid out on a table. I would note a couple things. One is a correction. Orange County is proposing to advance their project to 1314, not 1213 as shown in the table. The second thing I would note that in most cases, staff has indicated an alternative reimbursement layout that's different than has been proposed with the regions and is consistent with how staff has been moving towards this and how we've done this in the past. We have 6 projects that were included in the plan. 3 of them are funded are being advanced with local measure funds, and so should those come forward, we'll have some questions about the benefits to doing that and why there can't just be a changing of one project for another, and why in fact the 3090 reimbursement is needed. There are another 3 projects which are in a little bit different situation. The project in Ventura County is being advanced with $20 million of general fund money from the City of Thousand Oaks, which is a significant contribution of funds or loan of funds that would not otherwise be used for transportation. Similarly, the project in the Tahoe region is funded with funds from Nevada, which are discretionary, don't have to be used for transportation, so an important thing to consider when advancing projects. And thirdly is the project in Marin. This is a very small project. It is for it's a landscaping. It's not something that we would normally prioritize for advancing. It's pre-construction, which again, or piece of it is pre-construction, which is not something we would normally recommend for advancing. But one thing to note if this comes forward is it's of a small amount, $175,000, and they're going to be advancing it using private funds, which are not required to be spent on transportation. So some things to think about when we move forward on these. Should the regions wish to pursue the AB 3090 reimbursements, they'll be proposing STIP amendments, which include their proposal and answer a number of questions that are laid out in STIP guidelines. Staff will post the plan on the internet and update it as more projects are submitted or as reimbursement arrangements are approved by the Commission. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions, Mitch? Thank you. Move on to item 44. Juan?
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, this is an action item. This is a request by the Public Utilities Commission to set the amount to be set aside for the Railroad Grade Crossing Maintenance Program. As background, this program pays the railroads for the local government share of the cost to maintain the automatic grade crossing protection devices. The remainder of the cost is borne by the railroads. The railroads perform the required maintenance during the given year and then file a claim with the PUC for the local government share of the costs. That cost is paid from this set-aside. The PUC submits claims to Caltrans, and the claims are set aside from the funding that you allocate as part of the annual local assistance lump sum. And the statute provides for the PUC to recommend a larger amount than is required. The statute requires that a minimum of $1 million be set aside for this program. And the PUC this year has found that due to an increase in the number of grade crossings, they're recommending that the California Transportation Commission allocate a sum of $3.85 million for the fiscal year 2013-14. And the specific amount, of course, is set by the CTC. And while the Commission for the last 6 years has increased the set-aside to $2 million from the, higher than the $1 million required, they have noted that the state highway account revenues directed to this program reduce the amount of SHA available for the shop. Therefore, because the Commission considers all the programs under its purview, staff will not recommend the amount requested by the PUC, which is $3.85 million. Staff recommends that we again provide the $2 million for the program.
Any questions? So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
145.
Thank you, Commissioners. This item is also an action item. This is a request for a policy resolution by the Southern California Regional Rail Authority, the SCRRA. They're the operators of the Metrolink service in LA. Or actually, I should say in the South State, because they're in 5 counties. In October, 10, the SCRRA submitted a letter notifying the Commission of its intent to sell 23 rail cars that they purchased in 1995 with Proposition 116 funds. The fund transfer agreement that was used to administer these funds stipulates that the SCRRA would normally have to return the state's share of the proceeds generated by the sale of these rail cars purchased with the Proposition 116 funds. In the letter, the SCRRA also requested Commission's approval to retain the state's share of the proceeds to help refurbish about 50 passenger rail cars in their existing fleet to get them ready for the high-speed rail connectivity program. So the SCRRA's request presents the Commission with 2 choices: require SCRRA to return the state's share of the proceeds from the sale of the rail cars, or allow the SCRRA to retain the state share of the proceeds. In making a recommendation, staff consider the following facts. The Proposition 116 funds were approved for specific projects, and these particular funds can only be used by SCRRA for rolling stock purposes. Allowing the SCRRA to reinvest the sale proceeds to refurbish these Metrolink cars continues the original purpose of the Proposition 116 investment. Also, the State Treasurer's Office found that the tax-exempt status of the bonds will not be endangered if SCRRA is allowed to retain the proceeds. Also, we received assurance from SCRRA that state share of the proceeds from the sale of the rail cars will be dedicated to fund passenger rail capital projects and not for operating or planning expenditures. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission allow SCRRA to retain the state share of the proceeds generated from the sale of the rail cars, as long as the proceeds are used to refurbish their passenger rail cars as part of the connectivity program for the high-speed rail. And also in the resolution that is part of this item, you will ask SCRRA to abide by a number of other conditions stipulated in the resolution. Staff recommends your approval.
Any question?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I couldn't see in the report, how much do they think will be the proceeds from the sale of the 23 cars?
They tell me that. The SCRRA representatives here, but they mentioned that to me, and I
Okay.
failed
And
to
so while
recollect.
the other question I have is, cars are fairly ubiquitous, so we're fungible. So how are you're selling the 23 that were bought with 116 money, but there's another fleet of cars. So how do you decide whether the car that's being sold is a 116 car or another car?
They were identified because of, the agreement that they were purchased under would identify the vehicles,
By serial number kind of thing?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so they are specifically identified.
They are.
So I'm just curious about the amount of money involved.
We anticipate.
I think Ann-Louise.
Yeah. My name is Ann Louise Rice. I'm the manager of grants for Metrolink. We anticipate about $7 million in proceeds.
And have there been other instances where someone who has bought assets with 116 money has come before the Commission and asked for this type of a rollover? Because I'm always concerned with setting precedents, because then it happens over and over again, and I think that's extremely important in these questions.
Thank you. Yeah. No, this would set a precedent in that is the first Proposition 116 funded item that would request to retain the proceeds. I will say that we had a similar request earlier in the year from the LACMTA to retain the proceeds that would generate from a long-term lease on rail property that was purchased using Proposition 108 bond funds. And one of the reasons staff recommends that you approve them to retain the proceeds is because these Prop 116 funds, if returned to the state, would almost the only way to reuse them would be to give them back to them for rolling stock acquisition or rolling stock purposes. And we, staff feels that this use that they're proposing to retain the proceeds for is, it's an agreement with the purpose originally approved for the Prop 116 funds.
And again, my concern is with setting this precedent, because it'll come back in some other form, and so the facts might be compelling, but I do worry about how it'll be the next time, and then how nuanced the arguments are going to be going forward when other people try to do the same thing.
Yes, Commissioner Gilmedi.
Are we setting a precedent, or are we establishing a policy that others can follow now?
Well, I think you're doing both. This is the first one, and this is a policy resolution that you would be approving if you do so.
So other agencies, they could sell their old cars if they were bought under 116 and take the cash back to buy new cars?
No. Oh, you mean in the future? Yeah. Not necessarily. No, they'd have to come and ask you, because the requirement is that the state share of the proceeds be returned to the state. This would be, it's almost like an exemption to the procedures that are used to administer these funds.
And also to make the point that Juan already made, we're not buying new cars with this money. We are using it to rehab our existing fleet.
Mr. Chair. Yep.
My understanding, when I asked the question before, was that these cars are going to be sold back to the manufacturer. Is that correct?
No, they're going to be sold to, it's a,
another transit property in Northern California. Excuse me, in North America.
Different operator.
Yeah.
But
they're going to be sold to a different operator.
Correct.
And who is rehabbing them? Is that correct?
That is correct, and they will use them in revenue services.
So they will remain operated by that entity. Oh, I was told originally when I asked the question they were being sold back to the manufacturer.
No, that's never been the plan.
Okay.
Notwithstanding any concerns about precedent and so forth, I mean, what the real key here is that any request, whether it's this one or future ones, are going to have to come before the commission, and they're going to have to stand on their own merits. And we're not bound to say yes or no on anything down the road. It's a matter of whether that particular request and proposal makes sense, and we're the ones that are going to have to make that decision. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner.
I just had one question in terms of your overall fleet and the decision to sell versus refurbish ourselves. Do we have enough, and are you all going to be back asking for help to buy more next year, and we'd be better off to refurbish? Or?
Well, we believe we've done many scenarios on this, and we believe that this is helping us to right-size our plan, our fleet plan, and that we are going to be fine. We don't anticipate coming to you in the next year or 2 or 3 or 5 or more. But
okay,
we in our dream scenario, we'd have more riders and we'd need that. But that is not what our what our history or our data is projecting at this time, and that's how we make our our financial decisions is based on real data. And
yeah,
so
and Commissioner,
so your ridership, this meets your ridership projections.
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to add that, the proceeds from this plus some of their other funding will be used to rehab about half of their, about 50 cars, which is about half of their older fleet that they have in part of the fleet.
That's right.
Any other questions?
I move staff recommendation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 46, and I believe Commissioner Inman needs to recuse.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to recuse myself. My employer, Majestic Realty, is in a partnership that's in close proximity to this proposal.
Thank you. You realize you'll have to come back. Okay, we can move on with that.
Okay, Commissioners, this item is an action item. This is to approve staff recommendations for programming the 2012-13 State Local Partnership Competitive Program. This is the last year of the 5-year program. Proposition 1B, authorize $1 billion for the State Local Partnership Program with 5% set aside for the competitive program to match local uniform developer fees for transportation. We have about $15.2 million available for programming this year. We received 28 applications totaling approximately $18.4 million. Commission and department staff reviewed the applications for the competitive program and scored the projects on criteria that are listed in the statute and in our guidelines. In evaluating the projects, we used only the materials submitted. Based on these scores, we prepared the staff recommendations, which are shown in the attached list, and then we distributed that to all applicants on October 9th. Projects that are not recommended for programming at this time, there's 5 projects below the line, remain eligible for funding from any savings that become available through the year. The department, local assistance, has told me that they expect to see some deallocations in December, so we should be able to get to a couple of those projects as early as December and get them programmed. Any late applications, as you've approved in our last meeting, we'll accept late applications through November 30th. Those will be scored and then added to the list below the 5 that are there now in case we get any additional funds through savings or any other reason. So staff would recommend your approval of this item.
I believe. Question?
Laurel, the ones that didn't make the mark, do you tell them about their score and what they need to do on getting higher marks?
Yes, we do. We send the recommendations out. We talk to everybody, and we discuss. If they ask questions, we certainly can tell them how they scored or what caused I'd say a low score. Luckily, I think in this case, because it is our last year, I don't think we're going to really leave anybody out. Depending on what happens, I think we'll probably at least get to those 5. And I know for sure we can get to a couple of them by December. So I'm hoping that we don't leave anybody hanging this year.
Okay, thanks.
Jim?
Is this, are the statutory deadlines on this the same as CMIA?
Well, it's not exactly the same, but the way the law is written is that the commission has the authority to allocate during the 5-year period. And so the 5-year period ends at the end of this fiscal year because each period is based on when we have had an appropriation. And so we've had appropriations in the last 5 years, so our 5-year period is ending this year. So because of the way that's written, we have interpreted that in a fairly conservative manner and have told everybody that our authority pretty much to allocate ends in June. So we're having everybody come in to the extent possible by then.
Commissioners, I have a speaker, Mr. Sergio Reyes.
Mr. Chairman and members, good morning. My name is Sergio Reyes from Senator Rubio's office. Unfortunately, the senator could not attend because he's in the district today. He'd simply like to state his support for the City of Bakersfield's Transportation Improvement Project for $1 million for the Mohawk Street Extension Project. We had previously sent a letter last week, which you should have in your packets. This important project will certainly help improve circulation in the northwest portion of Metro Bakersfield by connecting Hageman Road on the north to Rosedale Highway on the south through the Mohawk Corridor, as well as improve travel to southwest Bakersfield. These traffic improvements will certainly help improve and mitigate air quality issues, as you know, continue to plague Kern County and Bakersfield. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
May I?
Commissioner.
Mr. Reyes?
Would you step to the podium, please?
Thank you. Mr. Reyes, if you could just relay to the senator at least one commissioner's appreciation for the work he is doing on efforts like CEQA modernization. My sense is that as we try to balance a great environmental law and make sure it's used for truly environmental purposes, that in the meantime we're not stopping great transportation improvements from the threat or the reality of CEQA lawsuits that could cost taxpayers and travelers both time and money. So please thank him for me.
Absolutely. We'll convey it to the senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator?
Likewise here.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Could you convey my admiration for your boss as well?
We'll do, Senator.
Now, that's a legislator who knows how to build relationships. Oh, well, then we should have a very long conversation.
Do I have a motion on that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay. Item number 47, Laura?
I can wait for Commissioner Inman if you prefer.
Yes.
She was last seen in L.A. heading south. Yeah.
Are we going to have an extended conversation on CEQA?
I guess I can go ahead and start if you want. I mean, it's pretty simple one. This is an action item to amend and do some new programming for the state local partnership formula program. We're doing an amendment in Santa Barbara by deleting a project and putting some additional money on another project. And then we're adding some projects in Madera County and in Fort Bragg and Willits. They're using up their balances. Staff would recommend that you approve the changes that are highlighted in Attachment 1. But in addition, I want to mention that Attachment 2 shows what is remaining in terms of balances for all of the agencies that have these formula funds. And just to let you know that we are working with them to make sure that these funds do get programmed and allocated by June. And I know that several of those agencies are putting together their plans right now. I expect we'll see them in December and January.
Any questions? I have a motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 48.
Yes, Commissioners.
Stephen?
Under this item, the department requests that the commission establish a $69 million reserve for the Route 99 corridor bond program to address unforeseen construction expenses. The reserve will be established from the balance of accrued program allocation award savings that now stand at $92.6 million. Commission staff supports the department's request and deems it to be a prudent and proactive move to safeguard the financial stability of the already programmed and allocated Route 99 bond projects. Rachel Faselli will present and walk the commission through the department's proposal.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. The State Route 99 program was adopted as part of the November 2006 Proposition 1B program. It included $1 billion to fully fund projects on the Route 99 corridor. Some of the projects were partially initially funded for project development by STIP funds or other sources. To date, the State Route 99 bond funds have provided for 17 projects to be funded through construction. Most counties along the Route 99 corridor lack a sales tax measure or other local funds that could be tapped for any supplemental funds if needed for these projects during construction. As the STIP is fully committed to other projects, the Route 99 bond program internally needs to be able to pay for overruns with a prudent reserve. With that thought in mind, the department analyzed the projects in construction, which now stands at $699 million for construction capital, and is proposing a $69 million reserve be put aside at this time. The department proposes the reserve be evaluated at least every 6 months on the projects in construction to further look at the risk for these projects and adjust the amount as needed to allow additional projects to go forward. The State Route 99 savings available in December will be around $115 million. With the policy above, that will leave $46 million that can be used to allow delivered projects to move forward. This assures the highest priority projects that are delivered currently can move forward. As more savings are made available from awarded projects, additional projects can be moved forward to vote as enough funding is available. The policy recognizes the State Route 99 program is unique and that the projects are funded in construction entirely from State Route 99 funds and will have no other fund sources to draw from should there be a need for supplemental funds during construction. And the department will reevaluate the prudent reserve every 6 months based on the risks to the project in construction and adjust the amount as necessary. The department requests the commission approve the prudent reserve savings at this time.
I believe, well, I think before we get into the questions, we have some speakers that I think maybe we should have speak at this point. I bring up Carlos and his group.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Senator DeSaulnier. My name is Carlos Chiamzon. I'm the Interim Executive Director for the Stanislaus Council of Governments. I also have with me our current chair, Mayor Charlie Gokin from the City of Waterford, and our Policy Board member, Vice Mayor from Modesto, Stephanie Burnside. I'm here to give some brief statements, comments on the SR 99 Corridor Program Reserve Policy. The San Joaquin Valley Regional Planning Directors Committee had submitted a letter regarding this item, the primary concern being the amount of reserve being proposed. Understanding that the project savings is an ongoing process, it is really our collective hope that the department and the commission maintain the maximum flexibility with regards to any project cost savings to allow the San Joaquin Valley to continue to deliver projects. I believe we have demonstrated that the Valley does deliver. In the Stanislaus County region, I believe we have also demonstrated our commitment to project delivery and also our commitment to absorb any overruns with local funds. Our particular project in this case is the SR 99 Pellendale Interchange project. The City of Modesto has worked very hard to get this project ready to list since June of 2012. So we await any potential funding eagerly. And I'll take any comments or questions or introduce my board chair and Vice Mayor Stephanie Burnside and Mayor Charlie Gokin.
You have a question? You, Commissioner?
Yes. So your request would require, or would basically ask that the staff recommendations reserve be reduced. Is that correct?
In the letter to Executive Director Reinhardt, we stated that we believe that the percentage based on the Commission's guidance, AIP Supplemental 2, should be based on the cost savings as opposed to the actual allocation. But we understand that in working with both the department staff that the prudent reserve is a good thing, and that's why, although we disagree with the numbers being tossed out there, a commitment from the Commission and the department would satisfy that we continue to move along these lines. But we have stated that we believe that the actual percentage should be based on the project savings.
You had mentioned that you're asking for the most flexibility on the funds. It seems to me that flexibility is maximized when you have right. It seems to me that the flexibility is maximized when you I mean, they can come back and if the money isn't, if we have money still left over after this initial tranche of projects, then we can always come back, right? I mean, we have that flexibility. Is that correct? So there's a matter of prudence is what the staff is recommending, and I don't think anybody's taken out of the box by being a little conservative, since you guys don't collectively have a lot of money to back things up with. By you guys, I don't mean your particular county, but I mean when you look at the quarter, I'm a commissioner that would like to see as many projects out there as possible, but I want to make sure that we have the money to pay for them too.
Understood, and I believe that's why I have my elected officials here to demonstrate at least our local commitment. The City of Modesto has expended local funds to get the project ready. Even within the Commission's agenda, we show some additional RIP funding coming back to the region, and my board chair is here to demonstrate at least the StanCog board's commitment to working locally to make sure that backfill is there.
Yes, Mr. Dunn.
Mr. Chair, is there any way that the resolution proposed by staff could reflect that the establishment of the reserve in the amount of $69 million includes a 6-month review and ultimately an eye to payout to allocation? Could the resolution be more clear that that is reflect the intent?
We can do that, and you can do that as part of your action, I believe. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question. Yes. Now, if you wait 6 months, what does that do to project deliveries?
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, at least for our project, which has been ready since June 2012, any delay would make we take the chance of any cost increases in materials and the bids coming in.
And I have a question for staff. The policy is 10% of the savings and reserves, or 10% of the project?
The commission's guidance to staff was 10% of the construction allotments, and that's what Caltrans staff has come up with. The $69 million number is based on outstanding construction. What the region is asking for that the number be based on 10% of the accrued savings.
Yeah, and I think that would be equivalent to around $9 million at this point of accrued
But they're
savings.
recommending
However,
$18 million.
They were recommending $18 million.
So
Yeah.
if we
And for a $1 billion program, $18 million is a very small amount in our opinion.
for what? Could you repeat that?
For a $1 billion program, when you include all of the different components, right-of-way support and construction capital, $18 million is quite a small amount of potential dollars to come back to for supplementals.
Yes, Commissioner Inman?
I was just unclear, is there local money available if you should run short to finish these projects, or are we at risk of having things out there and not?
So what they're saying in their particular county and their particular project, they would have local money to come forward to complete that project. What we're concerned about is the current projects that are out there right now. Many of those counties do not have additional money to draw from.
But
So
do
their
some of them
particular-
have it, and have we factored in if there is some other resource?
Well, then that would be a negotiation for each of the additional counties. Would you be willing to come forward when your next door county won't be able to? And, that becomes an equity issue potentially.
Andre, do you have?
Commissioners, if I may jump in, just to clarify a couple of items. One of the most important things we need to keep in mind is that we're really trying to make sure that those contracts that are already let or going to be let before the end of the year are fully funded. So what we're talking about here, when we're talking about savings, the savings, if we bring more projects in, we're adding to the liability of the program.
Yeah, we haven't got the savings in hand yet.
We have some savings, but we don't have all the savings. And the other thing we need to keep in mind, and that's really the reason behind this 6-month evaluation, is that once the contracts are awarded, we are really in a better place to weigh the risks, knowing what the resident engineers are going to bring in terms of information, whether contractors have started asking questions about potential changes that may impact cost. So it gives us really a buffer, if you would, to evaluate that risk, and then based on that risk evaluation, and as we start managing it and containing it, in 6 months we're able to release some of those funds to program new projects. So we're not really sitting on those savings. We want to use them. We just want to make sure that we're allowing for Caltrans and the regions that are responsible for the delivery of those projects, that they have really evaluated what those circumstances are, and based on that evaluation, they would go forward with the next steps.
I have a question, but as these projects get delivered and the contracts get let out, we're finding more savings.
Yes, Commissioner Assemi, as we award the contracts, we look at the savings. So the savings are really based on the contract award. The problem is, contracts they're not fixed, number. They are dynamic. So as you find issues you need to address in the field, that cost will go up. I mean, you've acted on supplemental funds for construction projects over the last few months, and that's really what we're trying to address. The fact that we don't really have the resources on a corridor level, And I appreciate really the regions, saying that, within the region they're able to cover the cost increases, but we have $669 million under construction or going to be under construction. That's a lot of money in terms of contracts. And, a single change order on a $100 million contract is way beyond the $18 million. I mean, it could be. So we have to really be prudent and make sure that we're not shutting contracts that are ongoing at the risk, of adding a new project that really may be added, but maybe in 6 months or, we can evaluate even sooner.
That would be my recommendation. And we don't want to hold up projects. And the trend has been savings. I mean, as these additional projects get delivered or get contracted out, we're finding out that those estimates are even coming in. The contracts are coming in below those estimates. So I think the trend is in the favor of SR 99, getting more projects. So that we don't delay more projects getting out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and really
maybe it's a three.
Yeah, speaking, for staff, it's always been our intent to put as much work out in the field as possible, but we really want to manage.
We want to be prudent, I understand. Of course.
Of that work and make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for potential failure, if you would. So that's really what the intent of this policy is.
Can we look at a 3-month evaluation?
We could. There's going to be a lot of projects that are going to be awarded between now and December, so we could come back in 3 months and reevaluate if we can then skinny down the $67 million.
Will that work for you guys?
Commissioners, I appreciate all the comments, including from the Deputy Executive Director. I believe, just for your information, the cost estimates that we have already include a 10% contingency. I think demonstrating my elected officials showing up here, the commitment to use local funds for any cost overruns. Appreciate the discussion. I appreciate the flex, and I believe that's the flexibility that we're asking for, that you keep an open mind, that the 3-month look-see, understanding it's a dynamic process. I appreciate all this, and I believe my chair and vice mayor would like to also make some supporting comments.
Okay, so let me just clarify that. So in your cost estimate, we already have a 10% contingency.
Yes, sir.
For all the projects on SR 99.
That's not true for all of the projects on State Route 99.
For the Pellendale project, based on discussions with the project engineer, we have included a 10% contingency.
What are they for the other projects?
They vary between 5 to 10% on the other projects.
So everybody's got a contingency.
Well, they always, all our projects go forward with a contingency. Yes, that's true. We're just talking about there are cases where we go over that amount, and that's what we need the reserve for, to take care of those cases where there's something that happens where we're going over that amount.
And just to let you know, up through now, close to $25 million of savings has been used for cost increases on the bond projects on Route 99.
On which projects?
And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects that have already requested and received supplemental funds in this program, to the tune of about $25 million already.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Charlie Gokin. You've actually covered, between Carlos and everyone up there, most of the things that I'd like to see. We just have a commitment to this project. It's important for our region, and we would just like the opportunity to move forward as soon as possible to capture whatever savings that we're now realizing up and down the state through the construction projects due to the downturn in the economy. So, the sooner we can move forward, the better. And that's kind of our request today. And, the 3 months obviously is a lot better than the 6. And we just anticipate savings. And the sooner we can get it done and get the interchange accomplished for the city of Modesto and, the county, it'll help air quality. It'll help a lot of the things in the region that are important that we're struggling with in the valley. So we just appreciate your consideration.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Burnside, and I'm the Vice Mayor of Modesto. I really can't add anything more other than to assure you that on behalf of the city, we do have funds available. We are committed to this project for any local overruns that would occur with the Pellendale project. So thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Well,
Commissioner Inman?
I just think that we have to keep the pressure on all of us, because if we listen to Susan over and over again on terms of the long list of needs across our state, you know, I realize that we're trying to be fiscally responsible and make sure that we have enough money to complete everything we've started, and I think that's a admirable position for all of us to be in. But also, I don't think we want to get where we ever lose sight of the fact that how many more of these projects, and as we go out on our town hall meetings, you know, we see regions that have waited 18 years to get access across 101, and just as by way of example. So I think we have to really keep the intensity and the pressure on every single project so that we collectively deliver to the public the best possible value we can. And my crystal ball doesn't tell me what prices are going to be. You know, we could all look at ourselves. Hindsight is always 20/20 and say, wow, we should have waited 9 months and we really would have gotten a good deal. But none of us sitting here know. But I think our communities all feel the lack of having adequate infrastructure. So I just want to encourage us to align our incentives so each and every project has that intensity to deliver.
Any other questions? Yes. Aaron?
Good morning, Senator, Chairman, and Commissioners. I'm Aaron Hakimi. I'm Chairman. I'm Executive Director of Kern Council of Governments. I have with me a representative from the City of Bakersfield. I represent 6 of the other San Joaquin Valley COG directors. You have our letter in front of you. I ask that you lower the $69 million reserve to $18 million or postpone your action on this item until December. I've come to Kern COG with 25 years of experience at Caltrans as a construction engineer. And I'll tell you, if you give Caltrans a reserve, they will use it on their projects, and it's unlikely that any new projects will be delivered if you choose to hold this money in reserve for changes. I want to make it clear what Carlos brought out, that these current 99 projects already have a contingency associated with them, a contingency fund. The $69 million is over and above the existing contingency fund. I want to make it clear that the City of Bakersfield, if we are given another project, has committed to funding anything over and above the amount we are given for a project. So I ask that you please lower the reserve or take action on this item in December. Agreeing to this $69 million reserve, in my opinion, will not allow any more projects to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, is there historical evidence that if there's a reserve, it gets sucked up? Because it seems to me that what we've experienced through Prop 1B, there's been a lot of savings, and we've plowed that back in, and there's been other projects where they've gone over, and they went over a little bit or a big time in some cases, and we've scrutinized Caltrans whenever we've seen those, but I don't know that it's particularly related to the fact of how much reserve you've got in the bank.
Exactly.
Thank you. Richard Shepard?
Good morning, Commissioners, Senator, other distinguished members of the dais up there. My name is Richard Shepard. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Elk Grove. And as a city, we submitted a letter to you yesterday. I believe you have copies of it. If not, there's extras available. Since I believe I understand the genesis of this policy, I'm not here to speak against it, because really, philosophically, I support a reserve policy. I think that's important. Instead, I'm here to speak in support of a project that the City of Elk Grove has ready to advertise. It's truly shovel-ready. The project is the Elk Grove Boulevard on-ramp to the Highway 99. The city pursued delivery of this project with our own funds, with the belief that it was eligible for $6.7 million of the Highway 99 Prop 1B monies. This belief was based on a North Region project delivery priority list that was developed more than 2 years ago as a strategic plan to optimize the use of State Route 99 Prop 1B bond-funded projects. So while I might be standing here alone, I believe I have the entire North Region behind me. This plan truly was a multi-agency plan. It was supported by all the local agencies engaged, their specific COGs, like SACOG and BCAG, and Caltrans. The North Region has methodically been delivering and receiving funding allocations from you, the Commission, in accordance with the project priorities on this list. Recent allocations have used funds from project savings. In September, last month, our project was to be submitted for an allocation of funds, but the region, collectively and strategically, decided to wait until some other large projects were awarded to see if additional project savings were available that could then be further allocated. It seems unfair, and it is certainly unfortunate that because we made the conscious decision to wait before requesting a funding allocation, that we can now no longer make that request due to this reserve policy. Because of this, I'm here to ask that you postpone the creation of this reserve policy until the impacts of all shovel-ready projects like ours are identified. I also ask that some priority be given to shovel-ready projects so that projects like ours can be funded, and funded as soon as possible. I feel the following questions should be considered before a reserve policy is created. 1, are there other projects like ours that are shovel-ready, and what will they now be delayed because of this reserve policy? Is 10% an appropriate level of reserve? I think you've all had some discussions regarding the size of the reserve. It is true that most projects go out with the 5 to 10% reserve in their own contingency, and it's also true that a vast majority of the projects are completed with extra project savings that are available. So is 10% at the programmatic level really appropriate? Lastly, I think the 15-85% split that, or the share ratio between North and South projects at this point in time should be reviewed. I think as you run towards the end of the program, the key is to utilize all the project savings and reinvest them into needed projects. So I would suggest that it's not a legislative requirement. I'd suggest you review that policy. With that, I submit myself to any questions you might have.
Any questions? Yes. No?
I have a question.
Yes, Commissioner.
Maybe it's for staff. So some of these projects, as they're getting awarded, it may take a year or two before we realize that, you know, if there's going to be cost overruns on other projects. In other words, if we have a 6-month or a 3-month review, that may not necessarily speed up any additional projects to get built, because by the time the contracts for the existing projects get awarded, whether they're savings that are realized or cost overruns that are going to be incurred, that's going to take how long? 1 year, 2 years?
Well, Commissioner, most of the savings that are being generated are savings between what's allocated and when the bids come in and what's awarded.
So how long?
Those happen quickly. So by December, or rather, we will have even more potential savings arrive. That's why we're suggesting and the Commission is suggesting that we do a review in 3 months instead of in 6 months.
So,
but as far as cost increases on projects that are under construction, those you don't know what they're going to encounter until they're digging up the ground.
That could be a year or two.
That could be a few years down the road.
And so you're recommending that $69 million reserve for 2 to 3 years?
Well, we're recommending a reserve that be in place, but we're recommending now that the reserve be re-examined every 3 months to see if we can skinny down the reserve, because as projects get under construction, the risks get lowered. When you're just putting the first shovel in the ground, you have much more risk. As you have many shovels in the ground, your risk decreases.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. We know that bids are coming in lower than estimates, so we should get some more savings coming.
Some bids,
some
not all
do,
of them.
correct. But if there's cost overruns, those won't get materialized until the projects are under construction, which could be 2 or 3 years down the road.
There are also cost overruns when the bids come in higher. And there are, and most of the instances that we already have on increases where bids were higher than
that's
the
the key.
allocation amounts.
Andre?
Commissioner Assemi, maybe I can give another perspective on this. Just think of it this way. We're really what we're saying is let's put $69 million aside at this point. In 3 months, we come back and say, do we need $69 million or should that be $49 million? Then we release some money to program more projects. In another 6 months, we come back and say, do we still need $49 million? If not, then we release some more monies to program more projects. So we're not really talking about maintaining a $69 million number throughout the program. We're looking at this $69 million to really decrease as we know how these contracts are shaping up. So there's really a timeline associated with this, and some sort of a curve that ultimately the 69 will become zero, hopefully, and we wouldn't have any really cost increases to deal with. But it's really prudent that we look at this in a matter of a span of time, just to assure ourselves that we're not really going to be facing any major hurdles that we have to cover with cost increases. The recommendation that was made earlier is look at it, maybe a shorter period of time. We're prepared to do that. That's not really a big issue. We can look at it, every 3 months and say at the end of the 3 months, what is it like? Caltrans is looking at the contracts. Caltrans talks to their resident engineers, the field engineers, and they collect data to tell them whether they have any substantial issues they need to address.
I think the question is, what happens in the next few months? Will there be? I mean, we know that many of these projects won't be under construction in the next few months.
Well, excuse me. What's going on here is we've kind of reached this bottom of the trough. For the last couple of years, we've been really lucky, and that bids have been coming in underneath engineers' estimate. Materials have been cheaper. We just had an overall better construction market. The economy's picking up. We're talking about material increases. We're talking about bid increases, just overall cost increases. And we just want to be careful that we don't get caught with our pants down.
That's right.
Because we got one coming up here that we're going to be talking about that is a significant increase in cost. All we're doing is just hedging, and you're hedging for 3 months. So,
This isn't casting concrete.
Right.
Right.
I mean,
Let's
we've
move
been,
on.
I think, everybody, the local agencies, the staff, Caltrans, been very prudent, and they've been very committed about whatever money comes in underneath engineers' estimate is gone right back out the door to do another job. I don't think we're doing anything different today than we've done since the inception of Prop 1B or the CMIA or any of the other programs that we're doing. So, with that, if there are no other speakers, I'd like to move staff recommendation.
Okay. Okay.
Is that with a 6-month or a 3-month review?
3 months, 6 months, doesn't make any difference.
Okay, 3-month review.
As soon as they find out we got money, it's going to go out.
I think the commitment is to bring it back in 3 months.
Commissioner,
Yeah, the recommendation would be to establish the $69 million reserve and come back in 3 months and re-examine it to see if it can be lowered based on the risks, and then keep on coming back every 3 months and re-examining it.
And based on 3 months, I'll certainly be supporting the motion.
can I have a motion on that?
Commissioner Alvarado already made the motion, I thought, didn't you?
We have a second?
Yep.
Any question? All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you. Item number 49.
Now that we're past the prudent reserve, we can actually now add a project to the program. Since sufficient savings exist in the Route 99 Corridor Bond Program to allow the programming of the Route 204 to Beardsley Canal Route 99 winding project, staff recommends that the Commission add the Beardsley project to the program and approve the project baseline agreement. This is for both agenda items 48 and 50.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 50.
Item
Stephen?
number
51.
51.
And 51.
Commissioner Sandag and the Port of San Diego request that the Commission delete project number 71 and 73 from the TCIF program because the projects have funding challenges and will not be deliverable within the constraints of the TCIF program. Ventura CTC requests that its Route 101 LA County Line to Moore Park Road improvement project be added to the TCIF program. Staff recommends that the Commission delete the two San Diego projects and add the Ventura project to the TCIF program.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Move on. Item
Commissioners, we will take up item 52 through 55 together. The next four agenda items, 52 through 55, implements the Commission's CMIA savings policy, whereby CMIA savings are to be programmed and allocated onto CMIA eligible projects that have already been allocated with regular SHOP funds. The Gerald Desmond Bridge project was allocated with regular SHOP funds and is CMIA program eligible. By this action, the Commission will amend the Gerald Desmond Bridge project into the CMA program, deallocate up to $200,205,000 of regular SHOP funds from the Gerald Desmond project and allocate a commensurate amount of CMA funds onto the project, thus encumbering under construction contract CMA funds before their December 31, 2012 statutory deadline to be under construction. Staff recommends that the Commission approve agenda items 52 through 55.
Any question?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 56, Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners. This item is a status report update on TCIF program projects that have not been allocated. In this report, risk levels have been assigned for each project. The projects are grouped by corridor coalition and a coalition representative present to address their projects. The first representative is Kenny Cow, speaking on behalf of the Northern California Trade Corridor Coalition, to be followed by Patricia Chen, representing the Southern California Trade Coalition, followed by Jose Nuncio, representing the San Diego border region, and finally Mike Lucan, representing the final coalition known as the Other Coalition, now consisting only of the Port of West Sacramento.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning, Commissioners. Kenneth Cow with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, representing the Northern California Trade Corridors Coalition. The coalition met with CTC and sponsors with unallocated TCIF projects last week, and I'm very happy to report that all projects are progressing towards meeting their schedules. Of the 7 unallocated projects we have in the north, 5 are classified as low risk, with 1 pending allocation this month. The 2 medium-low risk projects are progressing as expected and are going to come in with a baseline amendment in December. All projects are expected to meet the June 2013 allocation deadline, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about our projects.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman Tavalone, Commissioners. I'm Patricia Chen with LA Metro, and I'm speaking on behalf of the 5-county Southern California Consensus Group. Out of 47 projects in the Consensus Group currently funded in our area, 24 are now allocated. The remaining 23 projects are shown in the TCIF status update in book item number 56. Of these projects, 18 projects are low risk, 4 projects are medium-low risk, and 1 project is medium-high. The 4 projects with medium-low risk are as follows. TCIF project number 35, State College Boulevard grade separation. The project has right-of-way delays. However, OCTA is now handling the right-of-way work for the project to move it forward. A baseline agreement amendment will be requested at the December CTC meeting to align the schedule with the currently anticipated timelines. An allocation request is planned for February 2013. TCIF project number 40, Lakeview Avenue Overcrossing, also in Orange County. The project is progressing as expected, and a baseline agreement amendment will be requested concurrently with the allocation request in January 2013. TCIF project number 40, Vineyard Avenue grade separation in the City of Ontario. The environmental is complete, and PS&E is to be completed, my report said, within a few weeks, which I take to mean by sometime in November. A baseline agreement amendment will be requested in December, with allocation vote targeted for February or March 2013. TCIF project number 85, Avenue 52 grade separation in the City of Coachella. The environmental and right-of-way are complete. Baseline agreement amendment will be requested in December, and an allocation request is planned for March 2013. Finally, we have one project listed into the medium high-risk category, TCIF project number 50, grade separation at Clay Street in Riverside County. The design is 95% complete. Federal authorization is required to proceed for the right-of-way. Is Vince Mamano still around? But we anticipate that moving forward soon. A baseline agreement amendment will be sought in December, followed by an allocation request by April 2013. Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Commissioners, good morning. Jose Nuncio from the San Diego Association of Governments on behalf of the San Diego Border Region. There are 6 projects listed on your staff report. 2 of those projects you've already taken action on under item 51 to withdraw those 2 projects from the program. A 3rd project, number 74, is on your agenda for allocation this month. And the remaining 3 projects are moving forward with their final design, and those are anticipated to come in on time for a spring allocation coming up next year. And that concludes my report. Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Do we?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the CTC. Mike Lucan, manager of the Port of West Sacramento, representing the other or none of the above region. Just wanted to thank the CTC for their continued support, not only of our project at the Port of West Sacramento, but for your continued support of seaports in the state of California, with all the projects reflected of supporting seaports and goods movement in all of the corridors. Our project, the Sacramento Deepwater Ship Channel Channeling Deepening Project, is a very important project to our regional economy, jobs, and keeping the Port of West Sacramento as a viable economic development engine for our region. We are currently, because of the timing of this project and because we're pushing so hard on the schedule of this project, we are going to be one of the first major projects coming out of the Sacramento River Delta. The current state of Delta projects in the region and the heightened level of concern for projects coming out of the Delta with issues such as water conveyance and other issues have made, since we originally started this project in 2008, have made our project very difficult. We continue to be committed to the project. However, at this time, it is estimated that we will not meet the guidelines for the TCIF funding allocation in terms of the deadlines. We are currently working with TCIF staff, along with the Sacramento Regional Council of Governments and others, to examine other reprogramming of this funding within the other region. And we'd like to thank the CTC Commission and the staff for their continued commitment to the Sacramento region and goods movement efforts and this important maritime transportation asset of the Port of West Sacramento. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Just to let the commissioners know, we are working with the port to reprogram this project with a different project so the monies can be utilized in the West Sacramento area.
Any questions, or may I have a motion, please?
Motion to accept staff recommendation.
Second?
Oh, that, okay, all right. No, thank you. I will move on to item 57, 58, 59, and 60, and I think, Susan, you have them all.
Commissioners, agenda item 57 was withdrawn. So agenda item 58 is a draft DIR for the Tehachapi Rail Improvement Project programmed in the TCIF. There are 2 build alternatives under consideration in addition to the no-build alternative. The draft DIR found that there are no impacts of the alternatives identified as potentially significant with mitigation. Staff would recommend the Commission send a letter to the project sponsors with no comments on the environmental impacts or the issues that are addressed in the draft DIR. But included in that letter, staff would recommend that we include a reminder to the project sponsors that as this project is programmed in TCIF, upon completion of the environmental process, we would expect the project sponsors to confirm with the Commission whether there are any changes in the scope, cost, schedule, or benefits of the project, and if so, a reminder that a baseline amendment would be required, and that this project sponsors are responsible for identifying the funding necessary for any cost increases. Also, as this is a TCIF project, the Commission letter would also include a reminder that of the expectation to ensure mitigation of any air quality impacts.
Any questions? No. Have a motion? All those in favor? Aye. Item 59.
Commissioners, agenda item 59 is a supplemental draft DIR for the Interstate 5 North Coast Corridor project in San Diego County. The project proposes to construct improvements, including HOV and managed lanes on I-5. Caltrans prepared a draft DIR in 2010. A locally preferred alternative was identified in 2011 that consisted of express lanes in each direction separated by a buffer from the general purpose lanes. This supplemental EIR was determined to be necessary to provide updated information in response to a number of events, including new legislation, adoption of SANDAG's 2050 RTP, continued coordination with local agencies, and other factors. The supplemental EIR, draft EIR includes 4 build alternatives in addition to a no-build alternative. Staff would recommend that the Commission direct staff to send Caltrans a letter, and as well as SANDAG, that the Commission has no comments pertaining to the environmental impacts of the alternatives under consideration in the draft EIR, but that we would recommend that the project sponsors secure the necessary funding needed to complete the alternative that is selected, and also as express lanes and possible tolling is an option under this project, that if it's determined that a future action would be required by the Commission, that the Commission would encourage early communication with the Commission and Commission staff, whether a P3 alternative, project delivery method, or other tolling authority is required.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 60, Susan?
Commissioners, agenda item 60 is a final EIR for the State Route 91 Corridor Improvement Project in Riverside and Orange Counties, programmed in the STIP, and also included as a design build in our design build pilot program. The project includes constructing mixed flow lanes, auxiliary lanes, and HOV or express lanes. Significant impacts related to noise, Oakland woodlands, adverse effects to humans, and cumulative impacts cannot be reduced to less than significant levels with mitigation. Caltrans has adopted a statement of overriding considerations for this project, finding that the benefits of the project outweigh these impacts. Staff would recommend that the Commission accept the final EIR, the findings, and overriding considerations, and approve this project for future consideration of funding.
Move staff recommendation.
All those in favor? Aye. Item number 61.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, this is an action item. This is a TCRP amendment. The amendment basically does 3 things. It reallocates the previously allocated funds for right-of-way, which is totals $27,200,000 $27,318,000. Of that $27,318,000, the action also will reprogram and reallocate money, $16 million of that from right-of-way to construction. And finally, this updates the project funding plan. This is needed because 278 plus million in local funds have been added to the project funding. Staff recommends your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 62.
62 is also an action item. It's also a TCRP amendment, and this is simply to distribute savings from from construction to right-of-way. Staff recommends your approval.
Move it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 63.
Yes, Commissioners, we'll do the next 4 agenda items, 63 through 66. Together, these are TCIF project baseline amendments as reported under agenda item 56 earlier today. Some of the TCIF project baselines need to be amended to correct project schedules, revise scopes, and costs. Staff recommends that the Commission approve the TCIF baseline amendments.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 67.
Commissioners, item 67 is pulled from the agenda.
Thank you. Item number 68.
Yes, Commissioners, we'll do the next 3 items together, 68, 69, 70. These items are requests to directly negotiate 15-year airspace leases with 3 San Francisco businesses. The 3 businesses are Jewelry Square Associates, 888 Brennan Street Partnership, and Euromotors Incorporated. Currently hold short-term 2-year leases acquired through general public bid auctions for the under-freeway lease areas at the I-80 US 101 interchange in downtown San Francisco. Recent changes in the City of San Francisco public parking regulations have substantially increased the cost and time required to obtain annual city parking permits. The added expenses of the city's 25% public parking tax and costly permitting requirements have driven out the typical general public parking use operator from the market. In addition, San Francisco has adopted new landscape ordinances for the under-freeway areas. The department has no budget to maintain or improve the airspace properties. Under these conditions, it is in the state's best interest and benefit to directly negotiate long-term leases with employee customer parking interests who can improve in the lease spaces, but only if they can amortize the improvement costs over a long-term lease term period. Otherwise, the department will be stuck with short-term leases of diminishing value and complete inability to improve the lease sites. Staff recommends that the Commission find that these directly negotiated long-term leases are in the best interest of the state and approve the direct negotiations.
Move staff approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 72.
71, Commissioners.
71, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Commissioners, item 71 is an action item. It's a financial allocation for SHOP projects. This is a request by the department to allocate $6,514,000 for 6 projects that they are ready to proceed with. Staff recommends your approval.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 72.
Commissioners, items 72 through 74 are requests for STIP allocations. Staff recommends approval of these items.
All those in favor? Aye. Item number 75.
Item 75 is another STIP allocation. This is a STIP T project in Solano County. They are requesting to advance funds that are programmed in 13-14 and 14-15. Normal commission policy is to recommend advances in the last quarter of the year. Because we have capacity, staff will recommend this allocation and will be recommending the advancement of these T projects for construction while we still have capacity. However, I note we would look critically on requests to extend the period of project award on these projects that we advance. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this item.
So moved. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Item number 76, Mitch?
Commissioners, item 76 is a request for supplemental funds. The request is for a project in Santa Barbara County on Route 101. The request is for $520,000, which is a 0.9% increase over the current allocation. This is to close out a project. This is a situation in which construction of a bridge was between two existing bridges. The as-built plans showed two bridges curving, each continuing along the same radius for the entire length of the bridge. In fact, those bridges straightened out at the end. And when they went out and surveyed, the survey points were taken at the points where it's still curved, and so the tolerance was not sufficient to be built as designed. It had required a redesign, and therefore they incurred these expenses. The contractor, I think, submitted a claims that were about $3 million. The settlement was for roughly $800,000, of which they are requesting $520,000 in supplemental funds. Staff recommends approval.
Commissioner Gomedi?
I'm a little disappointed at these explanations we get in our report. This didn't tell me much of anything as I read it. And I'm wondering, Rick, if we're going to get these supplementals, I think the districts need to provide us with a little more background on what's going wrong. But this is kind of pitiful what we got.
Yeah, we can provide more background on some of these.
Yeah. Do you at headquarters review these before? When they come from the districts, do you guys review these?
Yes, actually we do, and my staff actually writes them. We just need to get more information from the districts, and we will do that in the future.
Well, you better get better staff writers. These aren't very good.
We passed along the need for the book items to provide a clearer explanation that doesn't require a back and forth between commission staff and Caltrans staff before we get to an understanding of what the issue is.
But we've talked about this many times.
Too many times.
Same items. It seems like they just keep coming back for whatever reason. And I have to agree with Commissioner Gomedi that there's going to have to come a point here pretty quick that we get the straight skinny on what's really happening and what's brought before us, because I just cannot go along with what we're looking at. So if you can look into that, we'd certainly appreciate it.
Because this is pretty basic. I mean, how do you miss a curve? I mean, you're standing behind a survey instrument and you're looking down a line, and it either curves or it's straight.
So it's actually a three-span structure, and so the center span or the main span, which is over the traveled way, is curved, and the back spans on either side were straight curtain walls that came off of those. Our preliminary investigations, which does the surveys, what they did was surveyed the main span and not the back spans. And so we're re-looking at how they're going forward with investigations in situations such as this. But in this case, had they looked, they would have seen it, but they didn't survey those points. They surveyed the main span points.
And I think what's disappointing is we go out of our way. I mean, this department over the last 6 or 7, 8 years that I've been involved has really improved and built a lot of goodwill with the public. Project deliveries, monies, and those things very rarely make it on the front page. Things like this make the front page, and it makes all of our jobs, the whole industry, it makes it just a little bit harder to go back and ask for more. So, and I guess that's what we're asking. It's just, we've got to keep the disappointments to a minimum.
Just get mean, Rachel.
That's not really in my nature, but I'll work on it.
Well,
Oh, man.
we need a motion on this. Yeah. Any other questions? May I have a motion, please? Do we have a motion?
All right, I'll make a motion to approve staff recommendation.
All those
I
in
am a-
favor?
I got a soft spot for those guys.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 77, Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners, we'll do the next 4 agenda items, 77 through 80. These are bond project allocations, and staff recommends Commission approval of the allocations.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 81,
Commissioners, item 81 is allocation for 10 revenue vehicles. It's a STIP allocation for $1,207,000. Staff recommends your approval.
have a motion? All those in favor? Item number 82,
Item 82 is an action item. This is a request by the Division of Rail for their annual allocation for the intercity rail operations and feeder bus services. This allocation is the portion that pays for the cost on the Pacific Surfliner and the San Joaquin route corridor. The amount being requested for these two corridors is $61,236,709. Staff recommends approval of this allocation.
have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 83, Laura?
Yes, Commissioners, this is an action item. It's a request to allocate $10,974,000 in Prop 1A high-speed rail funds. This is for the ACE Stockton Passenger Track Project. Staff recommends your approval.
Move.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Item number 83, please.
That was 83, Commissioners. Items 84 through 86 are the time extensions on this month's agenda. Staff, as noted in the spreadsheet, is supporting the recommendations by the department and recommends that you approve all 3 items.
Move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are we through? Yes, Commissioner Gilmetti?
Yeah, I'd like to take this moment to recognize that the San Francisco Giants are representing all of California in the World Series.
Yeah, do we have any public comments out there?
And they did it with very little funding, too, I might add.
Oh, that's Oakland.
Seeing nothing in the audience, I will adjourn the meeting.
Excellent. Thank you. Good meeting, Mr. Chair.
We're out early. There's nothing wrong with that. Under time and under budget.
Thank you.
Jim, at the Santa Cruz.
No, I don't definitely. Well, I love that one. In fact, I told my son, I said, if you screw this up, I'll have you start. We've had that one.
I keep emailing my doctor, who
has not yet responded after several emails. I'm going to email him again right now. No, not my PT. My PT is wonderful, but I need the doctors. Yeah, I'm doing that. I'm doing my leg lifts. Everything else that I've done for Jim Marp, I don't believe you. He's celebrating a birthday in Mexico next week. Hey, happy birthday, man. We're going to wait for you